Hello and welcome to Insiders, a podcast all about the world of television with me, Peter Fincham.
And me, Jimmy Mulville.
This is the podcast for people who love TV and who want to know a bit more about what goes on behind the scenes.
Now, this week we've got a special guest, Peter. We've got someone coming on, haven't we?
We have. We normally run through a few topical television stories. We've got such a guest we're so excited to have.
Can I say just a bit of a shout out for Liverpool?
A shout out for Liverpool?
Not the football team.
For the city?
Basically, the Liverpool Film Office has just released an impact report, and it's shown that it's made a huge profit for the region. Since 2018, they've shot something like 1,600 different productions, and Liverpool is now officially the most filmed city outside of London. And on the back of that, of course, the exciting news is that the Littlewoods building itself, this huge building, which is a bit like the Hoover building on the A40, the plan is now to convert that into a state-of-the-art studio and production centre with a school in the middle of it, teaching young people, 16 to 18-year-olds, all the skills in our industry. So it's a good news story about Liverpool, which I'd like to get out there. Is that all right with you?
You've got it out there. Yeah. Are you looking for a healthy discount then on the next production that you take to Liverpool and film? And
no, I'm not.
Based on, I'll give you a plug on our podcast.
I tell you what, though, this is germane to our guest coming on. I'd like to tell some stories in Liverpool which are about the resilience and the hope in Liverpool, as opposed to dodgy policemen and cocaine dealers.
Did you see the Left Bank show? Because I'm afraid to say this is not going to help your theory.
The City is Ours.
The City is Ours.
Yeah, it's full of cocaine dealers.
Yeah, it's gangsters. Good show, though. It's a really good show. They make it.
It's a very good show, but come on. Let's have other shows where people aren't dealing in drugs or being troubled police officers.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's a shout out to the creative community.
And that leads into our
happy,
guest.
Shiny show set in Liverpool.
Our guest comes from a city not dissimilar to Liverpool. She comes from Belfast, and she is no other than
Lisa McGee, the brilliant writer and creative genius behind the BAFTA and Emmy-winning Derry Girls. And Lisa's new series, How to Get to Heaven from Belfast, has just launched to fantastic reviews on Netflix. And Lisa, it's so great to have you on the show. And we're going to talk about you and we're going to talk about your writing. But just before we do, I just want to check something, because Jimmy has told me this and I don't quite believe it. He says you're a fan of our podcast.
I am. I'm a massive fan, yeah. I love it.
That's so nice to hear. And he also told me...
He can't get enough of this. It's pathetic.
I know. He said, well, just tickle our tummy for a second if you don't mind. He also says that you wondered whether Owen existed. The whole idea of does Owen exist, I think, comes from you, Lisa.
Yes.
He does exist. We know
But if you listen to, I think particularly the earlier ones, it really sounds like you're taking the piss.
Well, we are.
The two things aren't mutually exclusive.
We sail very close to an industrial tribunal with Owen every week. Any minute now,
or possibly now,
we'll be taken off to the cleaners.
I can't actually see him at the moment. He might be out there talking to the HR department.
Owens is a man of enormous patience.
Anyway.
Brilliant medication. We haven't quite worked out.
One of the two.
Anyway,
it's
good
great
to
see
see
you.
Can I ask Lisa how she's feeling after? Because she's just done about 2 weeks of end-to-end press interviews, junkets, screenings for How to Get to Heaven from Belfast. How was that?
It was exhausting. I have a lot more sympathy for these actors now that have to do it again and again and again. It's not my natural. I don't think it's where I love being, but it was interesting, and the response was great, and I just felt like I was saying the same thing over and over and over again, and started to lose sight of where I was and what was happening, and but yeah, so I'm kind of glad it's over.
And tell me, Lisa, because obviously Derry Girls was Channel 4 and was a huge hit on Channel 4, but How to Get to Heaven is on Netflix, and in many ways that feels like a very modern move to go from terrestrial broadcaster to one of the streamers. But how different is the experience of launching a show on Netflix and writing a show for Netflix?
Well, the writing and making of the show was very similar for me, because I surround myself with the same people. It's like Jimmy and Hattrick and the exec producers I've worked with for a long time. So the people around me have stayed the same for years. So apart from the occasional kind of meeting with Netflix and stuff where it felt a bit like the scale was a bit bigger or whatever, but it felt very similar, the creative stuff for me. the launching of the show is very different, and I still haven't got my head around it. And this idea that it's all out at once, I don't think that ever really fully landed with me, that it's all out at once and that everyone is at different stages of it in the first couple of days, and that it goes all around the world. And it's just, it's insane. And I'm still kind of finding my feet with that a bit.
Well, do you know it's number one in the UK and on the whole of Ireland?
I knew that. Yeah. Yeah. I've been sent a lot of screen grabs.
Any other countries that it's
Yes,
making a particular impact?
it's in the top 10 in Croatia.
Okay.
And actually, no, seriously, Australia, Canada, places across Europe. I think in the US, it's it's not in the kind of top 5 shows yet, but they're very happy with it. It's been a fantastic launch. I mean, I knew it was going to be a hit, but you always hold your breath a little bit because you don't quite know.
Oh, yeah.
Lisa, can we just go back to, you've had a huge success with Derry Girls. It feels like a definitive show of its sort. And then you move not only from Channel 4 to Netflix, but you move from a more recognisably sitcom setup to a comedy drama with an element of mystery and somebody who's died and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd love to know about how you got from that one genre to a slightly different genre in your mind.
I think the mystery genre has always been my favorite as a viewer, and I think like it's always been something I've wanted to try. As you know, they're incredibly difficult to write. Do you know those detective shows, those mystery shows?
Mm.
Murder She Wrote and Columbo and stuff are my favorite TV shows. I needed, if I was going to do one, I needed to do it my way. So I needed to like make it suit my tone. I don't think I could have written one in a straighter way, if that makes sense. So I guess I found I had to kind of mash up those two tones so that it would feel like a good fit for me. So I wanted to do it, but make it very kind of Irish and chaotic and, ensemble. A lot of those shows are single person. Are centered around one person, really, aren't they? But like I know I write better if it's an ensemble. So it was just finding a way to do what I wanted to do, but in my voice.
And you haven't got at the heart of it a detective. You've got at the heart of it 3 friends.
Yeah, they sort of become detectives. Like and they're very bad at it for most of the show. They get towards the end, they sort of get the hang of it a bit. But I love that idea as well of a lot of my friends listen to a lot of true crime and think they could have a crack at solving it, as lots of, I think, groups of women. I think a lot of women would really love to be detectives, or private investigators. So I think like that it was that sort of wish fulfillment thing as well. I'd love me and my friends to go on the road and solve a mystery.
I'm guessing, but Jimmy, you can confirm this or not, that you had a bigger budget for How to Get to Heaven from Belfast than for Derry Girls. Was that a kind of liberating thing, or was that a scary thing, as it might be from another point of view, when you're not within the tighter constraints of a precinct and a family or a couple of? Do you see what I mean?
Well, funny enough, I can answer that. Is that Lisa was well into the scripts before we got the budget together. So she was writing what she wanted to write.
Yeah, the scale of it was like kind of unintentional. Like after Derry Girls, I remember saying, I'm not, like, I don't want to write something with that many people in it again because it's too hard. And then this was even worse. But the story sort of just tells you what it wants to do sometimes, and you can't, you just have to go that way.
Is it a different editorial process in terms of, with Channel 4 or with BBC or ITV, we're kind of used to how the commissioners interact with the programs that they commission. Did you find it was quite similar with Netflix, but just different people?
Yeah, so Channel 4 we had so much freedom, but any experience I had with Channel 4 even prior to that was the same. I loved working there because they just sort of they got it and they backed it, and so I had a great time working there. And any notes we got were always, everyone was pulling in the same direction. We were all making the same show. What happened at Netflix was interesting because I had the same team. So everyone, again, we all had the same vision. We're making the same thing. But Tom Lyons at Netflix was brilliant because he was able, because it's a mystery, he was able to, because we're all so close and we've been working together so long, he was able to come in with fresh eyes and sort of shine a light on what bits of it might not be working or might not be clear or, might be confusing rather than mysterious, So it was great. I think because of this genre, it was great to have someone come in that could guide us on that front a bit. So, but it was all very positive.
Am I right in thinking you used a writer's room this time, Lisa, and that's a change from the way you worked before?
Well, I think probably the reason, if we're honest, we can't really remember, is time. I think like we realized we needed to be faster, and but now I wouldn't really want to do it any other way. Do you know, Derry Girls was so personal. I always think it would have been more difficult to explain what I meant to another writer than for me to just do it. But this, you needed other heads, and it was actually amazing because one of them was a good horror writer, and one of them could kind of write very heightened ridiculous comedy very well, and one was she wrote the younger gears very well, the darker stuff, the darker emotional stuff. So everyone had different strengths that um even we were taking stuff out of episodes then and getting writers to just write one section of them or rewrite them when we were pushed for time. So that was kind of amazing because it is just a big puzzle, this, and you having more heads on it as better, and then I could just sort of take, like, I was saying, like, at one point I nearly became, I know nothing about sport, so that this probably doesn't make any sense, but like a coach, do you know, like the person sort of putting the pieces together and working out where we needed to go, and so it was hugely helpful, and I would want to work like that on the next thing I do. And my husband's a writer on the show, and we've written together before, and the brilliant thing about him with me is he really doesn't care what he say. Like, he really doesn't care. He will just be like, that doesn't make sense. That's not good enough. So like I know I'm having a very honest voice in the room.
Yeah.
That's not afraid of offending me and just wants it to be better.
But you know what I got a feeling whenever I met you on set or saw you with the team is how close you all were. I mean,
Yeah.
you worked with Mike Lennox, who's directed it, and I've got to say, he did such a fantastic job. He's now, being courted by the great and the good in America. They're getting him to direct shows over there as well now. But I mean, you've known Mike for many years, haven't you?
Yeah, I've known Mike a long time, and I remember like us having no money in London and going to Pizza Express and plotting to take over the world. I was working on other people's TV shows and bits and pieces, and Mike was making his film school films. So so then the first time we really worked together was Derry Girls, and it just like completely clicked. And he's just such a writer's director, and I love working with him because there's just a shorthand we have now that it's just so much faster. He just gets at what I mean, and he never ever makes a decision that firstly, he would always check with me, but I know he would never make a creative decision that wouldn't be right. Which is, remarkable.
Lisa, take us back, because I think many of our listeners may have first been familiar with your work in Derry Girls, which seemed to kind of explode onto the screen as a fully formed and brilliant comedy, taking us to a world that comedies often hadn't taken us to, and an era that we'd often seen in a very, very different way. But talk us through how you got to there. I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, so I always think when you say these things on the run, it sounds like you had a great plan and it all clicked in, and if it actually it was chaos. I went to Queen's University to do drama. I was already writing. I was writing since I was little, like it's all I've wanted to do. So I was already writing plays by that point. They weren't very good, but I was writing them. And then I would have put those on at Queen's, then graduated from Queen's and would have put them on in pubs and stuff, like pub theatre. And then a film producer saw one of them and was interested in maybe turning it into a film. alongside that, I was doing plays. I was attached to the National Theatre, and making a bit of money doing plays. And I used my plays as my specs kind of thing.
Hmm.
And then I started getting TV work. So I wrote, the first thing I did was like a T4. Do you remember on Channel 4? They used to
Yes.
have, yeah. I did a thing on T4. I wrote on a show, like a kids, like a teen show thing.
Hmm.
And then I created a show in Ireland called Raw that ran for 5 series on RTE.
What was Raw about?
Raw was about a kitchen in Dublin, um, like a fancy restaurant's kitchen
Hmm.
staff. And it was a Cos Films. It was a British company,
Hmm.
but made for
Yeah, I
RTE.
know Cost Films,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I did that for a while, but I was writing on British stuff as well. Like I was writing Being Human for the BBC, and I was
Right.
writing. I did stuff like The White Queen and Andean Summers, period dramas and things. So I did a bit of everything on other
Hmm.
people's stuff. And then I created my first sitcom, which was called London Irish, for Channel 4, which is where I felt really at home because I loved writing comedy. There was always comedy in everything I wrote, but I loved writing comedy, and it was the first time I got the chance to write Northern Irish characters. And that didn't land the way they wanted it to land. Like it didn't get the audience that they wanted. When I look at the audience it did get now, it would be a big audience. Do you
Mm.
know what I mean? But then this is 13 years ago. So they cancelled that after one series. But it was Neris Evans and Phil Clark. And
Hmm. Yeah.
they were just so amazing and
Mm.
supportive and brilliant. And they were like, look, write something else. Write a script for us. And so I wrote Derry Girls, and then took it to Jimmy, and then the rest is history.
I think Channel 4, on this podcast, we tend to criticise when we need to, but I think Channel 4 need to be praised for this. No matter what the regime is, no matter what the administration, it seems to be baked into their policy. Once they find a writer they like the Father Ted writers, Graham and Arthur Matthews, they wrote a show called Paris, didn't they, Peter?
They did, yeah. I'm afraid to say we produced it at Talkback.
And it was a complete failure.
Okay.
And then the response was, well, why didn't you write something else? And they wrote Father Ted.
Yeah, I mean that I often think about, because I haven't seen Paris, but I heard that story. And it's like that's the attitude. Like I don't know, I worry that wouldn't happen now. Do you know? I
Hmm.
just really worry about that because it just went, well, that didn't work the way we
Yeah.
wanted it to. What else can you do? Because they knew in the culture they needed the voice. They knew it was the
Mm.
comedy voices they need. And now it's like if it's not a runaway hit all over the
Yeah.
world overnight, that's like, I do think that's sad.
I agree with you about Channel 4, and that's deep in their tradition to find talent and then stick with people and say, what do you want to do next? But to that very point, I wonder how they feel about the fact that how to Get to Heaven from Belfast is on Netflix. Do they feel, oh, we stuck with Lisa, we
Well, to be
blah
fair,
blah blah? Is it a purely? I mean, you may be able to answer this, Jimmy. Is it a purely financial thing?
Yeah.
Where they think the trouble is, if you want this kind of budget, we haven't got it, or is it, which is a slightly different thing, an exposure thing, because you wouldn't be number one in Croatia if How to Get to Heaven was on Channel 4.
the Channel 4 thing, I can answer that because in a way, Lisa wrote the show, and then my job was to find the money to make the show. And of course, we went to Channel 4 because we love Channel 4. Hattrick was formed off the back of commissions by Channel 4 back in the day. Lisa's career was kickstarted by Channel 4. So we have a big affection for Channel 4. And we came up with the budget, and it was a simple matter of money. And Ian Katz and I had a very frank conversation. And of course, he was upset, as he would be, but he understood. I said, the only thing we can do to make you feel better is for Lisa and I not to make the show. And no one ever sees the show. And he said, no, well, of course. So I said, unless Channel 4 can find the entirety of the budget. Now, what I will say is that, the streamers now want global rights. So the fact is that it's very hard now for local broadcasters to carve out their territory from the global streamers because, understandably, the streamers putting up a lot of the money, they want all of the rights. But it wasn't in terms of exposure. It was just a purely financial
But
budgetary.
so that people understand this, does that mean that by going to Netflix, you've got the budget you needed to make the show you wanted to make, Lisa?
Yeah.
But ultimately, they've got global rights forever. So you're never going to be able to resell it in 10 years' time to.
I think that's
do
what it
you see
means,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know is the answer, but I think so.
A very cynical agent in America once said to me, he said, the best deal my clients can get from Netflix is to do one series and then it fails because all the money's up front. But if it's a big hit, over the years, Netflix wins out and the creators clearly, you're on that long tail. Whereas if you're selling a show to a terrestrial, you keep the rights and then you can make money from the rights.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, when you think about Derry Girls, and
Yeah.
do you think there's a life beyond the TV show? I have to ask because people are always asking me, is Lisa going to write Derry Girls the musical?
Yeah, I think I mean, I would love to. I would love to. I haven't got an idea
Because the
for
music
how.
in the show is so brilliant. I know
Yeah.
you'd have original music, but music is part of your creative output,
Yeah,
isn't it?
I would, and I think it would really lend itself to a musical, and I love, like, obviously I love musicals, and I would love to have a crack. It's just finding the right story, do you know, like how to um where we come in and where we leave them, and what they're doing, because I think it probably has to. The Derry Girls stories in every episode are quite small, do you know. I think it might have to be something a bit bigger, but still feel truthful. So I think it's just about finding that. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to do that.
Peter's
Yeah.
a composer.
Oh, God, here we go.
Peter. We wrote a pantomime when we were at university, and Peter wrote all the songs,
Is that true?
Yeah.
and they were very good.
Why do you think Lisa would be interested in that in the list?
I'm just Peter. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
for
pick.
you.
I'm
Yeah,
looking after your
pitching you.
interests.
Nobody's
Write the Derry
nobody's
Girls
mentioned this in
musical?
public for several decades, Jimmy.
I know, but
It is true.
we might consider you.
Yeah.
Tell me about the music, because I don't know whether you know this. I had a meeting at Netflix when Netflix wanted to buy the series to acquire it. And I met a guy, he's probably been fired since, but he was head of acquisitions in Los Angeles. And he said to me, yeah, I think we'll buy it, but you have to remove all the music and replace it with library music because it's too expensive.
I remember, yeah.
And I said, well, no, the music. I said, Lisa writes the cues in for the music in the scenes. And often the music counterpoints what's in the scene, or it underlines what's in the scene. He went, no. Tell Lisa McGee that, her career will be very advanced once it's on. Talk to Michaela Cole, talk to Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And I said to this guy, I'm really sorry, I said, but it's a Channel 4 show and, they paid for it and they're the dog and you are a beautiful bushy tail. I said, so if necessary, we'll have to sell it ourselves. And in the end, they relented. And in fact, they did buy the show. And of course, they can afford to pay for the music.
Yeah, for most of the music, we had to replace some, but yeah.
Oh, did we have to replace some?
Oh yeah, like
Oh my
there's
God.
stuff. So like I mean, it's so complicated, but there's a Madonna song, and
And we couldn't get clearance globally.
we couldn't get clearance globally for that. So Pray, no, Like a Prayer, and we used Pray
Right.
in the global version. But then we had to go back and yeah, redo all that because the music is so important. So you
Yeah.
can't just whip out a cue, and like, so that was every time we put it out on Channel 4, we knew we were going to use a song that we may have to replace, but it was worth it because to have it on Channel 4 was worth it, and then we'd worry about it and try and get it as close as possible.
Yeah.
Also, like, I get really jealous. Like, I use music a lot in what I do. It's a big important part of the energy of what I do, but I get jealous of other writers that like this country that is such a quiet show, and they don't need music,
Yeah.
it's just birds tweeting and stuff. And it's like, but they can do that. But I think, like, that's again probably tone. Like, a lot of what I've done with Derry Girls and this is like it's to try and kind of suggest that no matter how dark or shit things
Mm,
get, there's joy, and music's a huge part of that for people, and well, art in general, like, but music and joyfulness and keeping everything kind of hopeful is really
mm.
important.
And the gear changes in How to Get to Heaven. I mean, one that sticks in my mind is that when the girls are in the club and they start dancing and their younger selves manifest, it's so moving. And then obviously they've been drinking a lot, and then it's a hard cut, isn't it, to them staring at the house, and
Yeah.
they're all massively hungover. And it's
They're
such a
so good.
brilliant, because the music just drops out, doesn't it? At a really
Yeah, at
special,
a really like beautiful point. It
yeah. It just
just
you'd like get rid of that, and then
yeah,
oh
what's
my
out.
god, yeah.
And they're so good at playing hungover, those three. Like they're it just cracks me up, like the how much pain they're in.
I think you've got a great chemistry between those three there.
It feels like they have a sort of, and had since the day we sat them down together, a shorthand with each other,
Yeah,
which has been amazing. There's such physical comedy, the comics too, like they're so funny physically,
yeah,
which women don't get a chance to do an awful lot. Like it was the same in Derry Girls, like where, women can pull faces and fall over as well, and they're as funny as men when they're doing it. And like, I think for a lot of actresses, particularly actresses of their age, they've often played very tragic, serious
yeah, yeah, yeah.
things. So this is just great. I think they just really relish getting to run around and be ridiculous too.
Lisa, do you feel connected? Well, I'm sure you feel connected to the kind of huge growth in production in Northern Ireland, and in not just comedy, which you do, comedy drama, but also drama set in Northern Ireland, like Blue Lights. When I was at the BBC in the kind of early 2000s, there was a conventional point of view that unless you were making a really dark and serious program about the Troubles, sort of for a mainstream audience, there was no point in making a program about Northern Ireland at all. There was definitely a real prejudice that it wouldn't rate or it wouldn't appeal to a
Yeah.
wide audience. Now, you've proved otherwise. Well, Derry Girls, proved otherwise with enormous success, but it's also being shown otherwise with very strong drama as well. Does that feel like all part of a movement that you're part of, or is it all coincidental? Just random things going on in different parts of the forests, as it were.
But I think it kind of started with the Game of Thrones thing, where the crews
Hmm.
were getting this incredible training, and loads of people were coming here to make incredible shows and films, and then
Mm,
that shift happened where we were making shows about ourselves, and that was what was really exciting, because for a long time there was a feeling here that exactly what you've just said, that like nobody wants to hear from us unless it's about the worst
yeah.
point in our history. So like I think we were ready for when the door creaked open,
Mm,
and it's very exciting now, and it does feel like you're part of a movement. The thing about living here and making TV here is we all know each other as well. Like we
mm,
literally all know each other very well. So when someone like Louise Gallagher wins a BAFTA,
mm,
like I know her. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm
mm.
delighted for her, and it's like everyone, one person's one's everyone's one. So it's just incredible at the moment. I really hope it stays this way. I'd love to see more comedy,
Yeah.
because I think we're a funny place. So I'd love to see a bit more faith and comedy from this part of the world.
Well, you kind of hope, don't you, that it's not just the broadcaster saying, "Well, we've got Blue Lights, we've got How to Get to Heaven, we had Derry
Yeah.
Girls." That's kind of moral licensing that goes on when you do one good thing and then that's it. Because what I'm astounded by, whenever I attend a read through in Northern Ireland, I'm sitting at the read through and I don't know any of the actors, but they're all really good.
Yeah.
And when you cast Derry Girls, you know, even the smaller roles. I mean, as someone said in the office today, even the smaller roles in How to Get to Heaven, they're brilliantly realized and performed with such confidence, and the
Yeah.
timing is just brilliant. And I think that's something that hasn't been. I mean, you and Blue Lights have kind of opened the door, but there's a lot more to come from that.
There is, yeah, and a lot more genres, I think, like a lot more, there's gonna, I think that the great Northern Irish horror has still, still has to be made, and someone's going
Yeah.
to do that, and romantic comedy, like
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for all these things to, but I do think that thing about the actors is so true, and I think that's, like, I was talking to someone was asking about the smaller roles and how to get to heaven when I was doing the press for the show, and that comes from as well, we know each other inside out, so I know who's going to nail that, like, because I've done theater with them, or I've worked with them, or I've that's there's just this real community here, which is our strength, is the other thing, there's strength in being a small place, um which I love.
And do you think the broadcasters also kind of should share some of the credit for this, because over the last 20 years or so, broadcasters have put such an emphasis on production in the nations and regions,
Yeah.
the BBC, Channel 4 being the most obvious examples of this, and said, there's an element of quite deliberately engineering it so that less is made in London and more is made in
Yeah.
different parts of the country. Did you feel the effects of that when you were kind of making your way? Because it's interesting that you say you came over to London to sort of make your way in theatre and the television industry, but
Yeah.
now that you're a big figure in the television industry, you're back in Belfast.
Yeah, I mean, that was weird, but like when I was coming to London, I was or when I first came to London, sorry, I was writing a lot of English stuff. Do you know, I was writing English characters, and people used to say about my dialogue, God, she's got such a different way of writing dialogue, and I think I was just writing Northern Irish dialogue for English voices. But then at one point, me and my husband were coming back to Belfast for work all the time. We made 2 shows on the bounce, like The Deceived and Derry Girls, which filmed in Belfast. And we just sort of had this moment where we're like, this is the wrong way round. Do you know, why are we living in London? Only spending the weekend with your kids then. So, like, yeah, that I've definitely seen that shift in real time. But I think, like, of course, there needed to be a push for that, or all the stories would have been so boring. Do you know what I mean? Like, all these regional stories are great and new, and even in drama as well. Like, that had to happen.
Lisa, you mentioned Game of Thrones earlier on. Did they have asked you to write for Game of Thrones?
No,
Why not? You'd
I'd
have
have
been,
been
because
I'd have been
I
the
thought Game of
worst.
Thrones was
Oh, that
wonderful.
would have been
To be
great.
honest, it could have done with a few more jokes.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, could you imagine me writing that? Like, how the tone shift.
I think there was some funny stuff in Game of Thrones, but it was a lot of blood
Oh
and
yeah.
murder and all that
I mean,
kind of
that's
stuff.
that I could not write that. Like, I've a lot of admiration for people that can. That's not. Yeah.
But you mentioned romantic comedy and you mentioned horror and so on and these things, and and one thing you've done that some writers don't do at all, you've written, you might say, an era-defining sitcom in Derry Girls, and with How to Get Heaven from Belfast, you've moved on already to another genre and another brilliant success. Some people find the big success that they write that kind of lands them on the map, hangs around them like very hard to move
Yeah.
on from at all. But so do you yourself, think, well, I'm going to move on to slightly different genres like romantic comedy or horror? And by the way, if you do, you don't need to take them all to Hat-Trick. I just wanted to get that into the conversation at some point. It's often a good idea to vary the production companies that you work with, get maybe a little bit of different of air breathing around you.
I'll have to have you killed, Peter. if that happens.
I think it's just like important. Like, I think sometimes what's the word? Not. Sometimes I'm quite like naive, do you know? And quite like I always say, like, I think maybe why I write teenage girls well is because I just still in my soul am a teenage girl, do you know, that is pretending to be a grown up. But I just think I have to just keep writing. I don't think too much about what I've done. I just want to do the next thing. And I think if I thought about it, maybe you could get crippled by like, oh, it needs to land the way Derry Girls did. You know, I just don't really think like that until the thing's coming out, and then I get nervous. But I just try and write what interests me, or what I would want to watch or find funny, and not overthink it.
Well, I think you've done us all a favour by, because I've, people, when people watch a show and they come and they try and overanalyze it, and writers get that all the time, don't they? About, well, were you trying to do this, and is it an allegory for that? But the fact that and I said this to Tom Lyons, who's the head of drama at Netflix, who, as you said, has been fantastic on the whole thing
Yeah.
and very insightful. And I said, I don't want to know their name, but think of the most serious-minded person in your drama commissioning team. He went, yeah, okay. I said, did they like How to Get to Heaven from Belfast? They said, yeah, they loved it. I said, that's great, because that's changing minds. Because a lot of drama people, it's
Yeah.
not their fault, but they're formed in a world where jokes can feel like it's cheapening a scene.
Oh, totally.
And my argument is always, no, jokes will enhance the drama. If you've got something tragic followed by something highly comic, it doesn't rob the tragedy, it just makes it more human.
Completely, and it's so much more truthful. It's how life is, and this used to be my huge frustration when I started, because I was a playwright, and you could do both those things at the same time, and I found that my jokes were always taken out of stuff, and because it was slow, and or there was no room for the jokes, and I used to always think, well, find room, because Russell T Davis's Queer as Folk was the first thing I saw on TV where I was like, that's a tone that I really like. It's really, really funny, really political, great drama. Do you know, he's doing everything at once. And it's like, it can be done, do you know, but I definitely found when I started in TV that the jokes suffered, and they didn't think about, you need someone that can direct comedy as well, and drama, do you know, like, you need to give it proper thought.
But traditionally, you could argue that television broadcasters have made it more difficult for themselves over many, many years by having drama department in one corner of the building and a comedy department in the other. And you don't get that in theatre, obviously. You don't turn up at the National Theatre and say, can I talk to the comedy people or the drama people? You don't get it in film studios. You don't get it in Hollywood.
No. I think fewer people understand comedy too. It's really hard to find great people, because people say about finding the comedy writers is tricky. Finding people that can work with comedy writers is really tricky. I think less people understand it instinctively, and people get so angry if it doesn't make, if something is supposed to be a comedy and doesn't make you laugh, like they get angry with you in a way that if something's a drama.
Oh, they're completely offended.
Yeah, if it's a drama that doesn't make you cry, nobody gives a shit. Like, but
Yeah, because the
comedy's
issues were good,
offensive.
or the
Yeah.
writing was nice.
So, Lisa, before we let you go, and we must let you go because you've been so generous with your time, what's next? What have you got coming up?
I mean, I would love to do more of How to Get to Heaven if anybody wanted it, and I'm working on something I'm not allowed to really talk much about, except that I will say it's a mockumentary style comedy thing, which I've always wanted to do. And then I'm just like thinking about maybe other mad things I might have a crack at, maybe a film, I don't know. And I also just really want to have a break for a couple of weeks.
Yes, I was going to say, maybe a break is the next thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's help you on your way by letting you go so you can start your break right now.
Thanks, Lisa.
So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
That's all for this week. Huge thanks to Lisa for being with us, and thank you for listening. Any questions you want to ask about the world of television, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you.
You can send us an email or get us on our socials, but it's all in the description.
Even better, why not subscribe to our YouTube channel?
And if you've enjoyed listening to Insiders, the TV podcast, do get it anywhere you enjoy your podcasts.
Thanks for listening.